I'm now joined by Dr. Ziaulhaq Shamsi, defense analyst. Dr. Nice of you to join us. Now, how do you interpret the recent claims made by India's defense authorities?
Okay, it's very interesting because the Chief of Air Staff of Indian Air Force makes a claim after 3 months of the ceasefire. Whereas you would recall that Pakistan Air Force made the claims right then and there. And initially it was denied, but slowly and gradually Indian officials started to accept it. It's coming after 3 months from Indian Air Chief is really puzzling. And that too, his claims are for a ground fire or ground engagement. And he claims that S-400 locked them and destroyed Pakistani fighters some 300 kilometers. And he claims that it is the longest ground fire engagement or surface to air engagement. Perhaps, this is my opinion and my professional judgment, that Indian Air Force Chief has been under a lot of criticism and a lot of pressure by his colleagues and by the Prime Minister Modi led BJP government for the last 3 months, that how come Indian Air Force lost 6+1 aircraft in only 86 hours of war, including 4 Rafale jets, which are supposed to be or considered state-of-the-art 4.5 generation aircraft in the subcontinent. And in my opinion, if you notice or if you observe his body language during the press conference, when he's making the claims, you can see the pressure on his face, and his body is not actually supporting his voice. That's what my judgment is. However, he has all the right to make the claims.
And talking about pressure and body language, I mean, the statement comes as India faces growing international scrutiny over human rights and regional aggression. Could this be an attempt to reshape the narrative or distract from deeper strategic setbacks?
Yes, why not? I mean, these things happen in geopolitics. Nations build their own narrative to ward off the domestic politics pressure. Let me take you back to 2019 Operation Swift Retard, when Pakistan shot down 2 Indian Air Force aircraft plus 1 helicopter was shot down by their own people. At that time also, Indian Air Force claimed that they have shot down 1 Pakistani F-16. Interestingly, after some time, Christine Fair, who is a distinguished analyst, defense analyst from the United States, she was visiting Chennai and she was posed this question. And you know what was her response? She said, nonsense. No PAF aircraft was shot. However, PAF leadership and Pakistan military leadership is very sober in this regard. And I'm very certain that neither Pakistan military leadership nor specifically PF leadership will use this kind of language against the Indian Air Chief's claim. Rather, I will also not say nonsense to his claims, because we have a lot of respect for our enemy, because respecting enemy is part of our culture. We only fight in the air, and you would notice that his claims are not as far as air combat is concerned. whereas our PF's claims were for air combat. And coming to your question specifically, because of geopolitics, India is certainly under a lot of pressure from the US because President Trump has recently announced some 25% tariffs on India because India continues to buy Russian oil and gas, and and India continues to remain active in BRICS, to which President Trump is deadly against, and he keeps on calling upon India to desist from buying oil and gas because that money Russia is using for its war in Ukraine, against Ukraine. So what I was saying is that as I speak to you, 21st century, the aerial battles between two regular air forces have been only between Pakistan Air Force and Indian Air Force. And the scores stands at 10-0. 3 in 2019 and 7 2025. And if India is trying to make it 10-5 or 10-6, it is really hilarious.
Thank you for that. Now, what concrete evidence has New Delhi, provided to back its claims? And is it even okay, to make such claims without giving any evidence?
Look, Tim, claims and counterclaims are part of the warfare. Everybody does it, but not after 3 months of the ceasefire. Not after 3. If India had claims, it should have launched right then and there when PF was claiming. And India then, IAF could have taken time to confirm them. But claiming ground kills, that is launched by S-400, surface to air kills of up to 300 kilometers. I think in this time of technology, all those aeroplanes which India is claiming must have fallen 300 kilometers from their launch site. So that means well inside Pakistan. And by this time, the US satellite, the Chinese satellite, the Russian satellite, the EU satellites, the British, everybody would have seen those wreckages which India is claiming now. And more importantly, let me give you this argument that after Operation Sindoor or after the May 25 war, very high officials from Pakistan have visited the United States. That is, our Field Marshal, the Chief of Army Staff has visited, and our Air Chief Marshal, Zahir Ahmed Babar Sidhu, the Chief of Air Staff, has visited Washington, D.C. and Pentagon and had detailed briefings. If there was such an happening that Pakistan's PF's aeroplanes were shot by Indian ground fire of S-400, Americans must have or should have pointed it out. It has not been done. So therefore, to me, it appears as if India is trying to ward off pressure which is being building for some time at the international level also, led by the US, and the domestic front also, led by the opposition leader, Rahul Gandhi, who is regularly questioning India and Modi government and Indian Air Force about their losses. Interestingly, IAF chief does not refute PAF claims and now launches a fresh claim of his own after 3 months of ceasefire. This is I will not say nonsense, as Christine Fair said, but I think it is not appropriate for a person of that stature.
Now, you've mentioned that India is possibly trying to save face by coming up with this, but apart from saving face, How else is India likely to benefit from this spin? I mean, France corroborated Pakistan's assertion that it downed Indian jets during the fighting. In that context, how might New Delhi benefit from, promoting this counter-narrative?
I mean, Tim, this counter narrative, I think, is very weak. You would recall Indian media. Obviously, it's very big. It's a huge country. It has a lot of influence in Western capitals, and whenever they build a narrative, it gets sold immediately. But you would recall during the operation, Indian media was claiming that Lahore has been captured, Islamabad has been captured, Karachi port is burning, and Pakistan's chief of army staff had been kidnapped. I mean, all those claims were proved absolutely rubbish. So, this counter narrative, which he's trying to build 3 months after the ceasefire, I am sure is going to fire back because he's not providing any evidence. And these days, technology intensive world, everything is visible on your palm. You can see it from the satellites, you can see it on social media, you can see the wreckage wherever it falls. People immediately rush to the area, take the films, and immediately upload it on YouTube and TikTok. That has not been done for the last 3 months. So I have all my doubt, because whenever you build a narrative on false claims, it always falls back on you. India tried it during Pulwama 2019. It failed to impress the Western world. It has tried in Pahalgam incident, which was very unfortunate, but it failed to impress the Western world. They did have sympathy for the tourists who lost their lives. Even I have sympathy for them. And I offer my condolences to the families who lost their lives and loved ones. But that does not mean that without any investigation, India started launching strikes against Pakistan's counterforce and counter value targets deep inside Pakistan. So Pakistan was left with no option but to respond. And Pakistan, following its strategy of quid pro quo plus, only responded that much. You must have listened to Pakistani authorities, the political authorities, also and defense authorities, that Pakistan Air Force could have engaged more Indian aircraft on that fateful night. But hats off to the Air Chief Marshal, who was conducting the execution of his own plans sitting in the command operation center. And he did not want to escalate the war. He did not want to put his government in an awkward situation. So he, in collaboration with Chief of Army Staff, they control, they exercise restraint so that they do not inflict too much damage to Indian Air Force. And only with 6 aircraft down in one night, Indian Air Force remained on ground for next 2 days. It got airborne on 10th May morning only for a ferry flight from, I think, Adhampur to Srinagar. And for next 7 days, again, it remained on ground, and Indian Air Force official accepted on media that they were revisiting their strategy and they were drawing lessons from that military or from that aerial engagement of 58 minutes, the longest in the history, the largest in the history since the World War II. So now, at that time, they accepted that, yes, they suffered losses, and that is why they grounded their fleet to draw lessons. And now, after 3 months, he is saying that we have also shot down 5 aircraft. I mean, this is hilarious.
And Doctor, to what extent do such conflicting accounts reflect deeper political or strategic agendas beyond the battlefield?
Tim, I think it's a domestic politics gimmick because Modi was losing ground very fast, the Prime Minister. Remember, he is heading a coalition government. He does not have even a simple majority in the House. And he was under tremendous pressure of his coalition partners because of the debacle of May 25 and also from the opposition leader Rahul Gandhi, who keeps on targeting him for his failures, for his corruption, for his uh, hardline Hindu philosophy that has converted a secularistic state of India into a hardline Hindu state. Moreover, there are elections on the provincial or the state level elections. Modi wants to build the narrative, and his narrative against Pakistan is always very popular with his own domestic audience. And that is what he wants to achieve. This is what he did in 2019. This is what he is doing in 2025. However, at the international level, I don't think he will be able to sell it off.
And just before we let you go, Doctor, what role can open source intelligence, including satellite imagery and radar tracking, play in verifying or debunking these kinds of military claims? And what dangers really do unverified or manipulated military narratives pose for regional stability and global security?
Yeah, that's what I said, Tim. That in today's scenario, where satellites are constantly watching, and not only one satellite, not only Chinese satellite, Indian satellites, US satellites, European Union satellites, Russian satellites, everybody is watching every place. No corner of Pakistan is hidden. And if so many aeroplanes had been shot, the debris would have fallen and somebody would have caught or captured an image of a downed aircraft, as Pakistan has done. Pakistan has evidence of their attacks and the destruction they caused against the S-400, many runways and counterforce targets. But India has not been able to provide any. And I'm very happy that he did not claim an air combat kill.
And maybe I should ask this last question. How have India and Pakistan historically resolved disputes over contested military claims, and what lessons might apply in this context?
Yeah, very good question. Actually, there has been no formal mechanism. Only the historians have written that 1965 war, PF outmaneuvered Indian Air Force. 1971, overall the result did not go in our favor, but as far as the air war was concerned, PF was the winner. And come fast forward to 2019, I think PF did a commendable job. And then in 2025, I think PAF has created history, and air warfare has changed the complexion of modern day warfare, the dominance of air warfare. And let me give you the credit to Team Babar. I mean, the entire PF team, ably led by the air chief himself, who not only conceived the strategy but executed also all by himself. Therefore, I do not think that the two services would ever sit down together and formalize the claims and counterclaims. It is only the technology that will be able to prove who was right, who was wrong, and the international observers who are going to prove. As far as Pakistani claims, PF claims are concerned, I think they have been proved because many Indian officials, military and civilian, have accepted that yes, the Indian Air Force has lost a number of aircraft. Obviously, they are reluctant to give a final figure of seven, six plus one, six manned aircraft and one unmanned aircraft. But you must have heard there have been seminars all over the world. Royal Air Force has conducted a seminar in which they were discussing how Pakistan Air Force outmaneuvered, outplayed, outsmarted, outshot from the sky 3.5 times larger Indian Air Force.
DL Ulhaq Shamsi there for us. Thank you so much.